On this episode of Speaking of Spirits, we're talking about hypnagogia. Hypno-whatia? If you make it, you'll clean it up. No. Hypnagogia, the state between wakefulness and sleep. On this episode of Speaking of Spirits. Speaking of Spirits is proud to announce that you can now support your favorite podcast and share your depth of knowledge of the paranormal to everyone around you by wearing one of our Speaking of Spirits t-shirts. That's right, we now have t-shirts available. We have them available in extra large and 2XL for only $30, which includes tax and shipping to your favorite haunted location. To get yours today, just go to Venmo at Pocatello Paranormal Research.
Hi everybody, this is Colleen with Speaking of Spirits, and we are back. We took a little hiatus and had some summer fun, but we're back in the studio today. And today I have with me Tim and Zach.
Good to be here.
All right. And today we are talking about hypnagogia, or hypnagogia. I don't know how to say that. Is it gognia?
I think, there's the N in there. Hypnagogia.
Yeah, I thought so too. And then I keep seeing it hypnagogia. I don't know. All I know is that it's crazy. And if you've ever had it, it's bananas. Right?
Yeah, I've actually had some personal experiences with it myself. So it's, it was pretty horrifying, actually.
It is. It's really scary. I think I've only had one episode. And, to this day, I can't tell you if it really happened or not. Mm-hmm. It was frightening. I mean, it was involving another person, but I don't know if it was real. So, what it is that it's a transitional state from wakefulness to sleep. So it's a state of consciousness, and it's kind of like that hypnotic state you get in if you've ever been hypnotized. And I'm really easily hypnotized.
Really?
Like, really, really easily hypnotized. It's freaky.
Really?
Like, all they have to do is say, we're going to hypnotize you. Bam, I'm out. I mean, it's like that bad. It's crazy. I just go. So, maybe it's because I'm always exhausted. So, I just welcome anything that can put me out. But, yeah, so...
Because I'm the exact opposite.
You can't be.
I've never been hypnotized.
Oh.
And I think it's a control thing. Like, when I was in high school, they had a hypnotist come and do the high school hypnotist thing.
Quack like a duck thing.
And he said, "Who can't be hypnotized?" And I was like, so they put me up there, and like he worked on me for like 5 minutes, and he's like, "Yep, get me hypnotized."
So it's a mental phenomena that may occur during this threshold of consciousness, right? It's a phase called hypnagogic. I think there's an N, but they keep saying with that one, hypnagogic hallucinations, lucid thought, lucid dreaming, and sleep paralysis. So it's that sleep paralysis part that I had, right? And I was lingering. I mean, it's like, was I awake? I don't remember. It was freaky. It was really, really freaky. So, what happened to you, Zach?
It was really horrifying. If you were listening to this and you don't like bugs or flies, you might want to skip the next 30 seconds or so. I woke up in the middle of the night and I burst out of bed and I saw my entire bedroom covered in maggots.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And
Ew.
I was screaming for a good 25 to 30 seconds before I kind of snapped back to my actual conscious state. And I was just screaming. And my wife was like, "What's going on? Why are you screaming? What's happening?" I was like, "I don't know." And I was like, "I just saw this everywhere and I don't know why it happened or what's going on." And I didn't sleep very well that night because I was concerned it was going to happen again. And, yeah, terrifying experience for me.
Have you ever
not
had
pleasant.
It,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah?
But I didn't really know I did have it.
Yeah.
Until I got my wisdom teeth out. So, I am a big boy, in case anybody's curious. And I got my wisdom teeth out when I was 18. And I stepped on the scale. And that's when the anesthetician said, "Oh." And so I had to wait like 30 more minutes so they could go get special drugs.
Oh.
And so they went and got the special drug, and they put it in me. And I made it through like 3/4 of the procedure. And that's when I got my consciousness back, but I couldn't move my body or do anything. And I was laying there, and I was like, "It's amazing how familiar this feels." And then he started really working on getting a root out. And I was like, oh, I know what's happening. And so I started humming. And he stopped, and he was like, "Tim, are you awake?" I was like, "Uh-huh." And I was out again. Anyway, so a couple years after that experience, I started thinking, why was that such a familiar feeling? And I think probably, it may be quarterly, even that much.
Yeah.
That there's that I'm just laying there and my body's not responding. Like my brain's on, I'm on.
It's just this sleep paralysis kind of state.
And just body's not doing it.
See, I've never had sleep paralysis. With the experiences I've had, it's always like this ability like to get up and move around, but my brain's just not fully like the on switch isn't on all the way. It's still kind of in that like sleep-like state.
See, and mine's the opposite.
But it's, you wouldn't call it sleepwalking, I guess, because I'm still consciously aware. It's just kind of this weird in-between state. Aside from the story I told you that was pretty horrifying, when I was younger, I also had experiences I would call false awakenings, where I would wake up and I would think I was starting my day, and I'd get out of bed and kind of walk around. Like I'd try to turn the lights on and the light switch wouldn't be responsive. I'd be like, "What's going on?" Then I would kind of snap back and be like, "Oh, it was a dream." And sometimes that would happen to me 3 or 4 times in a single morning, where I experienced this, like I thought I was awake and starting my day, but I wasn't. It was just a dream. Or kind of like a false awakening state. I don't know. It was a really odd thing to experience.
That would be a great title for an album.
False Awakening.
Oh, that would. Huh?
Sounds like a Tool album.
So I don't know. Again, hypnogogia. It covers both falling asleep and waking up. So that could have been your waking up side. It's not always possible to, in practice, to assign a particular episode to any given phenomenon to one or the other, given that the same kinds of experience occur in both, and that people drift in and out of sleep during waking up and falling asleep.
My Wikipedia disagrees with your Wikipedia.
Oh, really? What does yours say?
So mine says, again, pronunciations, I apologize. Hypnopomic.
Oh, yes, that I saw that.
Leading out of sleep. I'll press the back arrow so I can try to sound this one out. Hypnogogia is the opposite, right?
Yeah, I saw that hypno.
Transitional state from wakefulness to sleep.
Oh, okay.
So one's going in, one's going out.
I gotcha.
You know, what would we do without all these syllables?
Well, yeah, I can't pronounce my name half the time, so this really screws me up. So, the mental state of someone who's moving into sleep, I've been a lifelong insomniac to the point where I was an air traffic controller in the service and they pulled my ticket. And once they pull your ticket, you don't control again. And it was because I went through a period of over 78 hours without sleep, and I couldn't determine, pretty important when you're looking at a scope, to see the plane. because it looks like a game of Pong. And you're looking at a radar scope, and I couldn't tell which plane I was controlling. I had finally gotten to that state where I was like hallucinating. And my supervisor was like, O'Hara, what's wrong with you? I said, I can't see the airplanes. Which one? Which one's mine? He goes, there's only one there.
Oh, wow.
And I saw multiple. So that's no good. So right then and there, you're pretty much done. They pull your ticket and you're like, you can't be on any sleep meds or anything like that when you're a controller. It's the same thing as a pilot. You have the same restrictions, right? Mm-hmm. And I went through sleep studies and found out some really interesting things about sleep and what happens to your brain with the lack of sleep and all that, right? And so that paralysis part could be because when you're falling asleep, your body releases a chemical that paralyzes you so you don't act out your dreams. I thought that was really interesting. So your brain starts, you're relaxing, and that relaxation kicks this chemical in. And that way you can get into your dream state and you're not moving and thrashing. You're just subconsciously active, right? For some people, I would imagine that people who are heavy sleepwalkers are the ones who don't release that chemical or not enough. And then stage 1 is that relaxation, but you're still aware of your surroundings. Stage 2 is when your hearing shuts off. And stage 3, you're out, right? Yeah. And then you hit your rim and you're bouncing, you're ping-ponging back and forth all night long, right? Well, for me, for probably 40 years, I never hit stage 3 or REM.
Wow.
Never.
So did you dream a lot?
I dreamt all the time, but I was always consciously aware of my surroundings. Have you ever, because I used to do this all the time, and maybe now that I'm finally sleeping, but it's taken a lot of medicine to get there, a lot of drugs every night to get there, because my brain just never shuts off. But have you ever gone into your dream and knew you were dreaming, but you wanted to change the outcome, so you do? Yeah, that's cool. Not a lot of people do that.
Lucid dreaming it's a crazy experience if you can pull it off.
Yeah.
My problem is when I start to lucid dream, I instantly start to become aware of like my physical body. It's like I'm in this dream state, but I'm slowly lifting out of it because now I know that I'm in this dream state. The longest I've accomplished is maybe 30 seconds to a minute in my perception of time as I've lucid dreamed, where that's like, after that, I just kind of pop out of it. And
yeah, I don't know how long I'm in it. Feels like the whole dream.
Right?
But
It's like, however time passes in that state.
I'm just an over control freak, which, if you haven't gathered from my hypnosis story, but I have to have earplugs, and I have to put chest rub. What is that?
Vicks.
I have to put Vicks on my nose, so I have the same smell, and gummy plug, like the big plugs, so I can't hear.
When you go to sleep?
Yeah.
Oh.
And I have to do like a breathing,
Right.
I can't call it meditation because I don't feel like I'm in a meditative state.
But you're
But
controlling
I
your
have to
breathing.
control the breathing, like everything, if I want to even kind of try to go to sleep.
I have not ever been able to sleep with earplugs. I think it's growing up on a farm. It's like you always have like one ear kind of, what's going on outside? Is everybody okay? You know?
That's me. I get paranoid.
I
I'm
do
like,
too.
what if someone breaks into my house and I have earplugs in?
Yeah,
I can't hear 'em.
So I had a roommate for the summer, and she learned really, really fast one horrible night that you don't surprise me because I'm armed. And I came around that corner, and she looked, her eyes were big, and she saw what was in my hand. I'm like, dude, because she told me she was going to be gone for a week, and all of a sudden someone's coming in the middle of the night. I'm grabbing guns and going, man. She's like, oh, it's me. Yeah, so.
And that's the big problem. You know, like the old clocks that tick?
Yeah.
If there's any one of those clocks within 40 feet of me, I cannot sleep.
Yeah.
Oh, those drive me nuts
tick.
while I'm trying to sleep too. That consistent tempo, just something about that.
Well, and on top of any other noise, I can't do it. So, and I'm sure that I'm not the only one to suffer that way. But I married the exact opposite.
She needs the repetitive.
No, like she's asleep. Like it doesn't matter where, it doesn't matter when, it doesn't matter how. If she says,
I'm always so jealous.
Jealous.
My mom was like that. Yeah. And she could drink 2 pots of coffee. She was a cop her whole life. She could drink 2 pots of coffee, come home, and poof, out. Like, how in the hell? I don't have any caffeine for 3 days, and I still can't sleep. She just, sleep on her feet.
But I've noticed a big difference in dreams between us two. Like, she doesn't remember.
Oh, because she's so deep.
Yeah, because she's so deep and gone. Mine, I have the same dreams, but it's because I have the same thoughts before I finally go to sleep.
Interesting.
And so my sleep thought, like I have the same dream just about every day.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So there's people who spend a long time doing repetitive activities before sleep. In particular, one that's new to them may find it dominates their imagery as they get drowsy, and that's called the Tetris effect. So I'm wondering if it's like you work in a factory and you're doing the same thing, and then they move you to a different line, and then all of a sudden that's all you can think about, you know? This effect has been observed in amnesiacs, which maybe that's, I don't know, who otherwise have no memory of the original activity. So I am one of those people who can get a song stuck in my head and I'm trying to fall asleep, and I will go all night long, no sleep, hearing the tune. Oh, by the time I'm like in the morning, I'm toast, and that's all I hear in my head. I don't know where that comes from, and I guess that's that Tetris effect. I don't know. Also, people who do the same things. Like there was a rock climber who would write about he experienced the touch of rocks while falling asleep, because that was his life, right? And then people who will ski all day long, that night when they're trying to fall asleep, they will still feel the snow and the movement of the skis. People who have been on boats will feel the rocking before they go to sleep, even if they're not on a boat.
Wow.
It's kind of interesting how the mind works.
Well, and I think, I don't know, but I think all of us had the falling, jolting awake.
Oh, yeah, that's a fun one.
Yes.
And when that happens, well, for me anyway, you have all the sensory, like wind, panic, any word you want to think after falling off a cliff. That's what I feel anyway.
Do you guys ever get like a half dream associated with that when it happens?
Sometimes.
Like, as a kid, I used to have this thing where I'd imagine I was riding my scooter in a skate park, and I would go off like a ramp and go way too fast and just hit the ground. Then I would always get that jolt right there. It was this weird half dream sensation as I was falling asleep. I don't know.
Yeah, they say that there is an auditory component to these hallucinations. Like visuals, the sounds vary from intensity, from faint impressions to loud noises like knocking, crashing, bangs. Exploding head syndrome is what people call it. People may imagine their own name being called, the sound of crumpled bags, white noise, doorbells ringing, snatches of imagined speech. So that's where the paranormal thing comes in, right? Because we get a lot of people who say, I hear knocking when I'm asleep. It wakes me up.
And the question is it internal or external?
Exactly. And that's internal or external is a big thing. And sometimes you really can't get to the bottom of it. But it's that knocking component that people freak out about. Yeah. Well, and it, of course, everybody's knocking in threes. And yeah. Okay. There's also olfactory and thermal sensations, which have been reported, as well as tactile, like it's classified as paresthesia. People report seeing a flash of light, and I've seen that a lot. Or visual images in response to a real sound. Feeling of floating or bobbing in their bed.
Can we go back to the flash of light thing?
Yeah.
Like it's when you're asleep and you see a flash of light?
I guess this is during falling asleep. All of this is supposed to be when you're falling asleep. The flash of light. And I've had that. Or, a lot of times I feel like something has gotten up on the bed. But I have one cat that sleeps outside a lot. And she's the only one allowed inside. And it's like, what? She's not inside.
Yeah.
And that sensation freaks out. I think a lot of people have that. And we'll have people tell us that somebody sits on my bed at night. So, is it real? Again, internal, external. It's really hard it's hard to convince people that that's not really happening.
Mm-hmm. We had a big debate about this at work just the other day, actually. All the guys I was working with were talking about sleep paralysis and, how you often get like the feeling of like the demon sitting on your chest. And sometimes people will see that. And the debate was whether or not that's a real demon that they're seeing or whether or not it's like just something that's coming from your head.
They're actually seeing it.
And that's something, as I've researched, a lot of people report they see kind of a monster or a demon or whatever standing in their doorway or sitting on their chest, and they feel really heavy pressure with it.
Yeah.
And it's just this big debate like, oh, well, where is it coming from? Am I imagining it? Is my brain making it up? Or is there actually some sort of entity that exists in my bedroom and likes to harass me when I experience sleep paralysis?
Or maybe it's everything.
Either or, a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Or it could be a haunting causing all of that.
Yeah, kind of causing your brain to have those reactions.
It's amazing to me how, like a person who really uses their imagination, it just takes a little bit of stimulation. And whatever that stimulation is, but as soon as they're stimulated, pop. And I've often wondered about that. If they know, they see the sign, it's like, oh, hey, watch this. And then all of a sudden their whole world shatters. It could be one of those rabbit hole scenarios.
Yes, it definitely.
Makes you feel like you can't trust your own brain a little bit. You don't know
Well,
what it's
I
gonna
don't
do.
know. It's a fascinating thing, our brain. So I think it's funny because as an empath, I tend to feel people's emotions, and I also have learned how to block things from coming into my home, right? Because we do a lot of stuff. We do a lot of paranormal stuff. So I don't, people are you afraid things are going to follow you home? Like, no, because I'm mean. I'm not going to allow it. I'm just not going to allow it. However, that said, there are things in my home, and I've completely blocked them because I've had mediums come in the house, and they're like, oh, there was just a little girl here. I'm like, really? I have not. Really? The only person that's allowed in my house is my dad, and he can come and go. But everything else, only the one event with that other woman, I'm not aware of anything. But I think that suggestibility is huge, and a lot of people that we deal with, there is no telling them it didn't really happen.
Yeah.
None. I mean, if you even suggest that it didn't happen, then they think that, well, you're not a real team because you're not. It's so hard to deal with these things because are they real? I don't know.
I have these conversations with people all the time when this subject comes up, talking about these experiences, and people are always like, man, you just don't believe in ghosts. You're a skeptical. And it's like, no, I really do. I believe in, this, paranormal things happening, but I also come at it from natural angle of there are a lot of other things that could cause you to experience these situations. Could be your own head, could be a rat running around your house, But I believe in the paranormal. It's, I just think these, when I talk to people about it, I get that same thing where it's like, oh, well, you must not believe in the paranormal. It's like, no, I like to consider every angle,
Yeah.
And I guess I'm off on a little bit of a rant now, but
Well, that's
a little off topic.
It has a lot to do with being able to explain things.
Yep.
Like these dream states.
Yeah.
It's cool. I didn't know about the paralysis hormone.
Yeah.
And just thinking in my situation, by golly, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why sometimes our brain startles awake when we do really hear something. It takes our body a minute to get with it because we have that on board, that chemical on board, and it takes your brain a second to come to. I mean, to make your body respond. So they've actually used EEGs and studied the brain as people fall asleep, and they can actually see the signature of somebody when they're going into a hypnagogic state. It changes than somebody who's not. I thought that was really interesting. And then, of course, it changes when it enters REM as well, or a relaxed wakefulness, which would be right before that chemicals on board in your brain. But it's pretty interesting that the alpha waves change with these states.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then there's also something called microsleep, which are short episodes of immediate sleep onset, which may intrude into wakefulness at any time. There's this thing called a wakefulness sleep cycle due to sleep deprivation, and I think that might even be where I sit sometimes. In other conditions, it results in impaired cognition and even amnesia, and I think I've had bouts of that my whole life. Yeah. It's pretty interesting that a lot of authors have discussed it in their books. Like Oliver Twist had a section that dealt with this. Edgar Allan Poe used that state of hypnagogia to help him write. He said most of his ideas came during these states. Mm-hmm. And so he would immediately just like in that computer brain of his, just, okay, I'm thinking about the raven, and then drift off to sleep. The next day he could then write the stories, that kind of thing. It's pretty interesting. Mozart, a lot of famous musicians all used it, and they said that their music got better, their writing got better.
Yeah.
So
I wonder if that's where that plug-in phase came from.
Oh.
Plug into the subconscious.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I was watching Netflix because that's what all the cool people do. Mm-hmm. And there was a show called How to Change Your Mind, and it was this author fella, and he's in his like late 60s, early 70s, and he's just had a lot of cool experiences in his life, and he decided that he needed to refocus his mind. And so he turned to a lot of, in the documentary, each episode focused on a different psychedelic. And it was amazing to me because it was very informational. So he listed off how it was invented, why it was there, if it was natural, if it was man-made, just everything. Mm-hmm. And what the outcomes of the drugs are in folks. And the show that I watched, it had to do with PTSD and LSD, I think. Man, I was confident until it came out of my mouth.
Well, I know there was an army study done with LSD.
Yeah.
I want to, a long time ago. I want to say 50s, 40s, something like that. And they just drugged the hell out of our troops. And
I think I watched that documentary.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it messed a lot of them up for life.
Well, there's a line with all things.
Right, yeah, because they kept just onboarding as more and more LSD to these poor guys to study the effects of them. And it was really, actually a really heartbreaking documentary to watch because they didn't know what was happening to them. They just signed up to be in this experiment thinking, oh, this is great. It's a break from my normal duties. So
I'm pretty sure it was LSD. Okay, I'm going to put an asterisk by that, say I could be wrong. I'm not going to watch the Netflix
I know they've experimented with the effects of MDMA as well.
Maybe that was it. Maybe
individuals
that was
with PTSD. And also psilocybin, the active ingredient in mushrooms, I believe they've done some work with as well. Minimally, though, of course, because...
Well, so I bring all this up because I was doing a little research on what we're talking about. And a lot of times they were saying it was like right before you go to sleep. Mm-hmm. And so my little brain went cha-ching because that's kind of what we were talking about here with the word with a lot of syllables that I'm not going to try to pronounce again. And so when I was watching that show and I kind of lined this up and they said that they felt corrected like in this state. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, that's really interesting.
You mean use of the drug helped them come out of that state? Or
it helped them
reset. But what does that reset mean? What do you mean?
That's a good question. So, with the PTSD, it was different for everybody.
Oh.
But it seemed to start at the beginning of the dream. And so when they were going through their experience... my light decided it loved me, especially so. So it was like going into a dream state is how it was explained. So a higher plane, meditation, enlightenment, plugging in, whatever those words mean.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And anyway, so I kind of connected those two. And then when you brought up Mr. Poe and Mr. Mozart, that's kind of cool. Mm-hmm. Like, what if there is a plane there, an information plane, if you will, who knows? And if you could figure out a way to plug into it, whether it be natural or some sort of initial thing, how cool would that be?
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems like there's a natural headspace that's associated with that too. Yeah. And it's all about how to tune yourself into that headspace where you can access things on that perceived plane, as you would call it. And I think we've all at some point maybe experienced that sort of flow state where, for me, it's making music. For some people, it could be painting or playing sports where like, it's just, you're there, like you're in that flow state and you're on that plane and you've accessed it. I think it's interesting the different ways that you can go about accessing that kind of headspace.
Hellcats.
So among the more, these are signs and symptoms of this state. Mm-hmm. Okay. Transition to and from sleep may be attended by a wide variety of sensory experiences. They can occur in any modality, individually or combined, and range from the vague and barely perceptible to vivid hallucinations. So among the more commonly reported and more thoroughly researched sensory features of hypnogogia are phosphenes, which can manifest as seemingly as random speckles, lines, or geometric patterns, including form constants or as images. So I thought that was interesting that people are seeing lines or geometric shapes. They are either monochromatic or richly colored, still or moving, flat or three-dimensional. So, I mean, it's just a wide variety of stuff. So people also see imagery like tunnels of light. Images are typically fleeting or have very rapid changes. They are said to differ from dreams in that the imagery is usually static or lacking in narrative content. It's just happening. There's nothing with it.
Yeah. So
in our dreams, our mind is working and yeah.
So it's just like static.
Sounds like it. Yeah. It's kind of... So did you ever see the movie Jacob's Ladder? This was back in the, I want to say, late 70s. Movie came out and it was about LSD and people tripping and that's what the whole movie was like to me. Like, it was just, to me, I hated it.
Yeah.
Because I think you had to be high to watch it.
It was a movie about LSD for people on LSD.
I think so. It was kind of like Fantasia. I hated the movie because I think it was made for people who were high. But, that movie, and it had all of the flashes of light and the sensation of moving through tunnels and stuff. And I'm like, I came out of the movie going, what did we just see? It was so awful to me. I just thought it was awful. But anyway, people who have spent considerable time jumping on trampolines will find that up and down motion, they feel it before they go to sleep. So it's weird that our brain can't disconnect. I know when I'd come off a ship, I still feel water motion for a long time. It takes a day or two they call it getting your sea legs, right? It takes a couple of days for my brain to stop moving or feel the horizon going bobbing. It's a strange effect.
Do you think that's your brain trying to like defend yourself. I don't know how to
don't
say
know.
that differently. But it always seems to me that once you get used to something, like your brain just kind of sets like autopilot to hear.
Mm-hmm.
That way you can focus on other things.
Maybe.
And then once that
Yeah.
autopilot is still on, but you're going a different direction, your brain's like, hold on a second. We have to reset some things.
That very well could be. I'm wondering if I was sitting here while you were saying that, thinking about the whole paranormal aspect of this. And I wonder if people who are more prone to this state have more paranormal experiences, because there is a component that says you're more suggestible.
Mm-hmm.
That you can have things suggested to you and you'll run with them, rather than like Tim, not suggestible. But then you are very talented, so I don't know, and creative, so I don't know where that, I mean, if you're, let's say you're somebody who's not creative, not hypnotizable, not suggestible, do you not ever have this state then?
I feel like it would be a lot less likely based on everything we've talked about.
Yeah, like there's a component of some people's brains that will just run with it.
Yeah, if your mind is able to conjure things naturally, I think it totally makes sense that in that state, it might subconsciously come up with something and then you may experience it.
Right, so I wonder then, thinking about people who work in this field, like say a medium, I wonder if all mediums then have this.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if there's any medium that's working out there that doesn't have this. I mean, those are the most fascinating things for me, is that trying to group people in those commonalities, because it would help us with our investigations later to be able to say, okay, not saying this is what happened, but can you be hypnotized? Yes, click the box. Are you highly suggestible? Yes, click the box. Okay, you might be leaning towards being prone to this state where nothing paranormal is really happening. It's just your mind.
I think it's a great angle to consider.
Yeah.
So
Because all of us aren't that different,
right.
but we're different enough that we can make different realities for ourselves.
Yeah.
In a way, we all do live in our own different realities.
Exactly.
You know, we're all in the same relative one, but it's all about perception.
All we have in common is the dollar.
So thought processes on the edge of sleep tend to differ radically from those of ordinary wakefulness, right? So, for example, something you agreed with within the state of hypnogogia, I still can't say it, that word, may seem completely ridiculous to you in a wakeful state. So it may involve loosening of ego boundaries, openness, sensitivity, internalization, subjectification of the physical and mental environment. So empathy and diffuse absorbed attention. So you're more receptive in this state to suggestion so there's people who have gone through experiments in this state. And the person running the experiment can suggest that they do certain things and they'll do it. So it is a form of hypnosis. I mean, if you're that suggestible, then that's hypnosis to me. I don't see any difference.
I wonder, is the difference having a memory of it? Did they remember doing it? I ask all the good questions.
It doesn't say.
That's why they pay me the big bucks.
I guess that is kind of the big difference there because it seems like people tend to remember extreme episodes of hypnagogia,
Extreme ones.
where they don't remember extreme episodes, or you wouldn't call it episodes. I guess maybe sessions of hypnosis.
Yeah, so I've gone through hypnosis for various things, and I remember a lot of what was said to me. A great deal. I went through it for one of the sessions I went through it was for my repeated migraines, and it helped a lot.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I've gone through it for different things medically to try to help with a few, those things. And I do remember almost entire conversations like the whole state of being under hypnosis. I remember.
Yeah.
And
so what's the difference between hypnosis and hypnosis? that hypnotic state and being conscious then?
I don't know. Maybe I was completely relaxed and couldn't move.
I can imagine there's kind of a flow to it too, right? Where when you talk, I'd imagine it just kind of happens.
Well, and I'm not talking.
Yeah, it's just kind of coming out, you know?
No, I'm not talking.
Oh.
It's the the doctor who was putting you under does all the talking.
Mm-hmm.
You answer certain questions.
I was thinking of the way I guess you would answer. I'd imagine it's more like I would imagine there's more of a flow to it than like if you were just talking normal, like consciously in a conversation. Like I'd imagine it just kind of moves really easily, you know, the things you say.
So one of the things we had an earlier episode on the alien abductions, where that couple was hypnotized years after the abduction at separate times. And I mean, their story was right in line with each other. There was no difference in their story. So you could tell, though, just from the inflection of their voice, although they got terrified, you could I've listened to their hypnotic state, their recordings online. They're online. And you can hear the terror and the panic in their voices, but they're not moving. They can't act it out. Where in real life, they ran because they were terrified. But so they're recounting it, but they're not able to act it. So it's very, very similar to.
Yeah. Two sides of the same coin, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah.
There has to be lines there, though. I'm going to have to do more research.
I think it's interesting. I don't know if I mean I didn't tell my story because it's pretty personal, but it was terrifying. And the next day I told my friends what happened because I was absolutely convinced it happened. What happened. And I mean, there was cops involved in everything at that point because of what I perceived happened. But I'm not sure now, looking back, if it really did. It was that intense. Have I had other episodes? I think I have, but I'm not sure. I think I have. I do get the sleep paralysis part where I'm like, I can't move, but I think I'm consciously aware of what's happening. So I don't know. Our minds are really, really screwy. I mean, you know, I mean, we're trying to resolve all of the crap we hear on a daily basis every time we go to sleep. And it's bizarre what we're capable of. Yeah. So, you know, going back to the paranormal, if you've had these states, you know, think about whether or not it is this transitional sleep state that you're in. And it comes with auditory. It comes with, I mean, you can hear, you can smell, it comes with all of these aspects to it. So maybe think through it. Is this really happening, or is this my brain playing tricks on me? Because it's hard to distinguish.
And with everything, so I don't get freaked out real easy. It takes some stuff for the most part. But whenever I do get freaked out, I completely overanalyze everything. Absolutely everything. And probably the last time that I was really freaked out was when we were in Vernal, or wherever we're calling that. And so I was overanalyzing for hours and hours and hours. And finally, I think I might have been in this state that I can't pronounce with lots of syllables. I think I was there. And I was laying there and relaxed, finally, and just trying to sleep. And my inner Tim said, "What are you going to do about it?" And so that led this Tim to really think about it. What am I going to do about it? And in the long run, what does it matter? How is that going to affect tomorrow? And so I got going off on that tangent, and next thing I know, it was morning. So I think there is something to this state, and I think that it's right in line to help us be able to go on to our next day.
Well, we appreciate you spending the time with us for this particular podcast. And if you have any suggestions of podcasts for us in the future, please send us a message on our Pocatello Paranormal Research Facebook page. We'll certainly take your suggestion into consideration. For now, this is Speaking of Spirits, signing off.
Ha 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 ha!